On this episode, I'm joined by Stephanie D'Abruzzo. Stephanie joined Sesame Street in 1993. Since then, she's performed hundreds of characters, including Lulu, Curly Bear, and Prairie Dawn since 2015. She's also puppeteered and voiced countless characters for projects like Bear in the Big Blue House, Donkey Hodie, and Julie's Greenroom. And if that isn't enough, this slacker has earned herself a Tony Award and Drama Desk Award nomination. And wait for it, a Theater World Award and a special Outer Critics Circle Ensemble Award for originating her roles in Avenue Q. Craig Shemin is also with me today. Craig is a writer, producer, and director. His credits include work with the Muppets, the Jim Henson Company, TV animation, and books like The Muppets Character Encyclopedia and the upcoming book about Jim Henson's first series, Sam and Friends. Craig produced and directed the award-winning documentary Behind the Scenes at Frogtown Hollow. He's now president of the Jim Henson Legacy and curator for Henson screenings at the Museum of Moving Image. They're with me today because they have wonderful stories to tell. And unlike the long-form interviews we usually do on our show, these mini episodes give our guests the chance to share one favorite memory about each of these very special people. Stephanie D'Abruzzo.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. What can you tell me about Caroll Spinney?
I didn't mean to disrupt your flow there, Gene.
That's all right. I didn't really have a flow, so it was good.
Oh, it was a beautiful flow. Now, I'll say this about Caroll Spinney. There are many things you can say about Caroll Spinney. One is that all of the Muppet performers love what they do, right? But I've never met a Muppet performer who loved what he did more than anything in the world. He loved being Big Bird and Oscar so much. It was everything to him. The joy that he got, even just telling stories about telling people that he was Big Bird. It was palpable. And the other thing about Caroll is that he didn't have any mediocre feelings in the middle. He loved hard and he hated hard. There's very little middle ground. He had opinions about people, and if he loved you, he loved you. And if he didn't like you so much, I'm not going to say he had an enemies list because he's not at all like Nixon, but let's just say that there were people who had wronged Caroll in the past, and we all knew who they were. But that's what you love about him. He was never met anyone who was more passionate, really, who just felt everything so strongly. The other thing that he loved more than, two other things he loved more than being Big Bird and Oscar were drawing and Debbie Spinney. That was the triumvirate of love. That was his sturdy table. That was his 3-point plan. I love that about him. And later
both Louise and Fran, who I've spoken to, have mentioned how generous he was with his drawings. He was always drawing things for people.
He drew when he put together his scripts, because he prepared his scripts for his little monitor in a very specific way. And he would make folders with them with the episode number on them. He would do these beautiful drawings just for that folder. And it was just on an old script page that he would fold in half and stick the pages in. And I have a few of them. He gave them to me. A couple of them he signed. And they're all different. They're all unique. Some of them are very stylistic. One of them has Big Bird with his upper beak very short. And there's a speech bubble saying, "I got a nose job." Like he had these alternate universe versions of these characters in his head, and he could do anything with them. And then if you happen to ask for a drawing for a friend who had a baby, I did that on 2 occasions. Just no questions asked. I couldn't pay him if I tried. He was so generous with his art.
Yeah. I'd love to see the Big Bird nose job someday.
Well, you give me a few seconds and I can find it for you.
Okay. How about, if you're willing to do that when Craig's telling his story.
Yeah, while Craig tells his story, I will find it for you. I know exactly where it is in the filing cabinet. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we pulled some of them out during the Caroll episodes of Below the Frame, and when for Caroll's, we did a little tribute to him about a year before when he sort of retired from Sesame Street, and I had lyric sheets made with those pictures scanned on the back. So it was fun. But yeah, he drew all the time. But later, in later years, Caroll lost the use of his left hand. It was starting to deteriorate, and it was very hard for him to not be able to puppeteer anymore. But he could still draw, and he drew every day. And he would say that. He would say, I'm going to go home and draw. There was around 2015, it was about one of the last years that Caroll was working physically on set with us on Sesame Street. And at that time, he would throw the lines live and then Matt would be inside the bird actually doing the lip sync puppetry. And then they would have somebody prompting him. We all knew that if Debbie was next to him, Caroll would just lovey up with Debbie and not focus on the work because he loved her so much. So one of the puppeteers was always sort of assigned at that time was assigned to sort of have him in front of the script off to the side, show him where the lines were, tap him on the back, sort of cue him. And so there was a day where I was doing that. And at the end of the day, he was released early around 4:30. And he said, "Oh, I'm so glad I can go home and draw. I was so happy I'm so happy I can still draw." And then as he was getting up out of his chair and leaving the set, just under his breath, only a few people could hear it in Big Bird voice, "I'm still Big Bird, damn it." That never left him. That spirit of Big Bird never left him. But Caroll was saucy too, and that's another thing I loved about him. When Caroll was on and at his sharpest, right, he was a stealth bomber of comedy. I know that a lot of people think about the funny Muppet performers, and they don't always mention Caroll in that group, but Caroll could bite. He could say something that could really bite as those characters. And I've always loved seeing that in his personality.
Right. Craig Shemin.
Gene Barretta.
What can you tell me about Jim Henson?
Well, what could I tell you about Jim Henson? Well, I can tell you that soon you'll be able to read about his first TV show in a new book called Sam and Friends.
Excellent. How soon? Do you know? Do you have a release date?
I don't know. We don't have a release date. We just got the cover design approved, and I have hundreds of pages done, and now a lot of fact checking and double checking, and trying to figure out what I missed. But I was fortunate enough to have met Jim and worked with him in a very short time. I started at the company about 2 years before he passed away. And I started as an intern. And I think I've told this story before, but it's still sort of the best memory that I have of working or of being in a conversation with Jim was the first day that I met him when I was an intern. And it was the company softball game. Oh. And Jim had been away working on The Storyteller. And this was the summer of 1987. Oh. And I had been there a few weeks, and we were having our company picnic and softball game in Central Park. And it was the first time in weeks that Jim had been back in New York. And I was very nervous. I was like, it's the first time I'm going to see Jim Henson. I don't know if I'm going to get to meet him or talk to him. And, what a lot of people don't realize is that the Henson Company at that point in time, and even today, is still a relatively small company compared to, Disney and these other huge media conglomerates. Probably there were about 75 or 80 people working for the company full time. And then they would hire on people for productions and so forth. But at that point, it wasn't a huge amount of people. There was no Los Angeles office yet. So it was basically New York and London. And so I'm mulling around. I'm trying to sort of hear what Jim and Frank are talking about. I'm like, oh my God, this is big.
Eavesdropping.
Jim and Frank are having this. And I get close enough and I actually hear them. So yeah, I can't drink coffee anymore. It's kind of bothering my stomach. And, oh, really? I don't drink a lot of coffee either. And I'm like, this is what, this is Jim Henson and Frank Oz talking about. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear about good stuff. So the day goes on, and there was an umpire working the game who was very, I guess you would call him a character. He was a little over the top. And I'm standing off to the side and I'm watching this go on, and Jim Henson comes up to me, and I'm like, I don't know what to say. Boy, that umpire is great. And he said, yeah, he was at our game last year. You did our game last year too. Were you at our game last year? He was trying to figure out who I was. And I'm like, no, I just started. I'm an intern here. Oh, you're the intern. I heard we had a new intern. Welcome. I'm Jim Henson. And I'm like, I know, I'm like, and we talk a little bit, and he's like, oh, you're having a good time? Oh, good. I got an oh, good.
Oh, you got an oh, good.
I like how you're trying to slide in. You're trying to slide in a little impersonation there.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to sort of talk about what he's saying unless in
his case, you need his cadence.
He had a very particular way of talking.
Speaking of the oh good, we find ourselves at Sesame Street saying oh good all the time. It's just it's so satisfying to say that.
Cool.
And so we had a little chat, and then it was time for the game to continue. And Jim was taking the field. He didn't have a baseball glove. So I offered to loan him my glove because we were on the opposite teams. So for several innings, we would exchange the glove. And
you would pick out little pieces of skin with DNA on them.
Yeah, you could make a clone.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I brought the glove up to him and asked him to autograph it, and he signed it.
Do you think that was the first baseball glove he ever signed?
It's quite possible. I think. It may be the only game used Jim Henson baseball glove. And then I brought it over to Frank, who I think I may have introduced myself. I don't know if that was the first day I met Frank. I think it might have been. But I said, Mr. Oz, since you're a legend in baseball, would you sign my glove? And he gives me a legend in baseball. And then he looks at the glove and he sees Jim's signature. And he said, oh, well, if he signed it, I can sign it.
Oh, wow. That glove isn't around anywhere, is it?
It's buried in.
I know exactly where it is.
Look. My assistant is going to go find the glove.
Is it okay if we show that?
We can certainly show that. Yeah. So that's sort of the story. And then the baseball game. We had a great time that day. And then I would continue to see Jim every now and then. And when I started as an actual employee. Mm-hmm. I saw a little bit more of him because one of my jobs was to write up Jim's quotes for the newspapers and things. So I would sometimes get called into Jim's office and he would talk for a while on a subject, and then I would write it up into a quote. And
let me guess, you had a box of like sports memorabilia, and each time you would have him sign something new.
No, but there it is. You can see the signature.
Oh wait, you know what? Let me bring you up. Let me do this. How do I, there we go.
There we go.
Wow, look at that. Okay, folks, I'll be posting this on the Barretta Brothers Facebook page along with Stephanie's memorabilia. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and no, I didn't have one of my, I didn't have any sports material to bring up, but when I would have I would write these letters from the characters to respond to various things. And I did this on a few occasions. And one of the letters, anytime we would do this, I would write the letter, I'd print it out on stationery. It was from Kermit or Rolf or anything. I'd send it up to Jim's office to have him sign for the character and for himself. But I would always print out 2 copies in case one of them got damaged. If he made a mistake signing it, I didn't have to go up and bring another copy. And he would often, he would always sign both copies because he thought that you got to sign both copies. He signed what people put in front of him. So I kept the extras. So you're
basically, you could have pulled a Radar and had Henry Blake sign orders for you to go to Tokyo.
He didn't sign a lot of blank things. So if a letter signed Kermit the Frog would get me to Tokyo,
3-day pass. Yeah.
Steph, let's see.
So you can see he wrote that's the episode number and the day it was being taped.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very casual.
It looks like it's the Jewish New Year, but
it's fantastic. But he wrote. I'll show you some of these others. So talk about the stylized. I love this.
Oh wow!
This
I
Stylized
love that too.
Big Bird, right? And he signed it for me. 2001. My goodness, right?
Yeah.
And he did an Oscar. Pretty classic. This was holiday time.
He did some doodles on a toy I have that I bought at the convention. Like it's either an Oscar book with a recording in it or a Oscar little trash can toy, something like that. Yeah.
I love this. It's again, it's Big Bird, but it almost looks like it's drawn by a different illustrator.
Oh yeah.
And then this is classic Caroll, right? That's the Big Bird that sort of he became known for drawing. Mm-hmm. But then there's this.
It's like a platypus nose,
right? And again, it's almost like the old Big Bird with the little cone head with not a lot of feathers on top,
right?
And then this guy. That's
alien.
A little alien Big Bird. And again, he had drawn it, but he added when I asked for them. He went through them and added the Hello Stephanie and even put the 2001 on there. And then this, just like evil lurking Big Bird.
Like
it was almost like
he was at you.
It was almost like that's all I have, unfortunately. Oh, and on the inside, these are basically just old scripts.
You should make sure Debbie and Betsy know that these exist because in case they want to put them.
I will. I think I scanned them. I'll double check and send them. But yeah, I mean, they're so special to me because for so many reasons. One, Caroll's artwork, to have a Caroll Spinney original of anything. But two, just the fact that I'm sure that there are hundreds of those in garbage cans in landfills, because he wasn't precious about those things, but they were precious to us.
Oh, yeah. Well, Stephanie DeBruzzo.
Yes.
What can you tell me about Jerry Nelson?
Jerry Nelson. I said this on an episode of Below the Frame, but the thing about Jerry Nelson, when you say the name Jerry Nelson, when any puppeteer, anyone who knows Jerry, brings up Jerry or says the name Jerry Nelson, inevitably that person and everyone in the room with them will go, "Oh, Jerry. Oh, Jerry." Because and again, no, a lot of beloved puppeteers, a lot of people in the world who are loved, no one else elicits that response except Jerry. You see someone go, "Oh," and they're talking about Jerry. He would walk into a room and he wasn't gregarious about lighting up the place. He would just walk in and the room would be brighter. He would walk in and everyone would smile. And yet I've never met anyone who was more humble about himself or his work than he was. I remember, just in the Muppet room, and it was a long time before I felt brave enough to ask him anything. I remember saying, "Jerry, do you do voiceovers? Do you do commercial voiceover?" I tried that. I can't get work doing it. "Jerry, do you record, have you done like an album?" And this was, long before he had recorded his album. No one's in it. I just do my music for me. And he loved playing music, but he didn't do it. He never did it as a show. He did it because he had to. There was something, I remember a quote, and I don't remember who said it when I was in college. I remember hearing, "When the heart is full, it comes out in one of two ways, either through tears or through song." And when Jerry's heart was full, he would sing. He'd get out the guitar, and he was so just lovely to listen to. But also, he didn't have to be perfect. Like, he wasn't putting on a show. He was just
Yeah,
doing what he did. And the only other time I've seen that in a musician actually was interesting. It was the 50th anniversary special, and Itzhak Perlman in this big group scene was there. And in between takes, Itzhak Perlman is noodling on his violin. And you know what? It wasn't great. Like, it was scratchy, but he did what real musicians do. He was noodling. And
It wasn't great. You're using a noodle. You got to use a bow.
No, he was noodling, and it wasn't about sounding perfect. It wasn't about performance. It was about
Just
working
enjoying
on a
the instrument.
technique and enjoying the instrument. And that music just fell onto the floor. And it wasn't perfect, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
And that's when I thought, that's a real musician. Someone who can be in front of other people and be in the process of working on their craft without their worrying about it being letter perfect. Because no one's going to listen to that and say, Itzhak Perlman's not a really good musician. What does that sound like? No, Itzhak Perlman's a genius. The same thing with Jerry. No one was going to hear Jerry hit a bad chord on the guitar or miss a note or, be a little flat and say Jerry Nelson's no musician. No, it was the joy of the imperfection and the doing and the process that I really love.
Human quality of it,
Yeah, and I've said this before on I think it was on your show. We were talking about Jerry, and again talking about funny Muppet performers. And Jerry was funny in a different way. He would sneak up on you because he didn't always be funny with a joke. Other performers would be funny more, not, I don't want to say jokingly, but they would say funny things. He would say things funny, or he would say something that would be so true to the character that wasn't funny on its surface, but it would be so subtle and so wonderful that it would just stay with you and get you. He had a way of, all of his characters have a vulnerability.
Right.
I think every single one of them.
You know what I have a great memory about for Jerry? Remember that period when he had that really biblical beard and mustache?
Yes.
It was so beautiful. It went down to maybe like halfway down his chest, and it was gray stripes, white stripes, everything.
Yes.
It was great. Yeah,
it was epic. Yeah, he was who he was, and it was okay with him. I think that there was always a feeling, I think sometimes he felt like he didn't, you got a sense that he never really truly got his due. As not later in life, but he didn't have the superstar characters on the Muppet Show. To me, he had the funny characters, or he had the characters that did really good small things, but they were smaller characters. But he would then channel that into that feeling of, I know what it is to be misunderstood, or I know what it is to be more than you see me as being. And so all of his characters have this wonderful little vulnerability to it. And Jerry, and Jerry was also a little wicked. And I love that about him too. He wasn't a saint. And that kind of showed in some of his characters. They were so, and this is not to cast aspersions on anyone else, but I feel like Jerry's characters were so human, but then vocally so out there and wonderful. Wow. I love it. I just, everybody loves Jerry Nelson. Nobody doesn't love Jerry Nelson.
There's a bumper sticker there. Yeah.
It was impossible to be angry at him because he was just so lovely.
I have a little Jerry story if I can.
Oh, please do.
Sure.
It was when we were getting ready to do the concert at Carnegie Hall, which Gene, you were at.
Yeah, that's the last time I saw him in person.
Yeah. And when we were getting ready to do that, I was working on this with John Tartaglia. And we said, what would be great is if we could get, Jerry wasn't up to doing any performing on stage. But what if we were able to get him to do the Muppet Show announcer, to open up the show and introduce the show and do that. And it's something he can record from there. So I called up Jerry and asked if he would do it. And he said, yeah, sure. I'll do that. I have a Sesame Street recording that's set up through the studio I work with at Cape Cod, down in Cape Cod. So I,
just piggyback.
Yeah. Call up that studio and we'll book a little extra time and I'll do it after that. So I got in touch with the studio and we booked it, and I sent Jerry the script for it. And so I patch into, when you do these remote sessions, they give you a number to patch in, so you can listen. And I patch in, and, I just, it was after he had completed the Sesame stuff. And I just heard Jerry's voice, and it was very thin. And I'm like,
his regular speaking voice.
He was barely talking.
Well, he was on oxygen at the time.
And, I'm like, I felt really bad that I'm getting him to do this because he can, barely talk. And then I'm start thinking, is this going to be even usable?
Oh.
It's like, I feel bad. And I'm thinking about like all the stuff that, it's like old Groucho when you hear, the stuff she shouldn't be on stage. And I'm like, am I doing am I being bad to Jerry? And he just said, yeah, we're ready to do it. And the recording studio operator, engineer, it's like, okay, we're ready. Let's try one. And okay, let's get ready. We'll do it. And then, 2 seconds later, it's like, welcome to Carnegie Hall. And it was, he sounded exactly like the Muppet Show announcer. And that's what he's like, you want me to do just like the Muppet Show announcer, the pigs in space guy. Yeah. So, okay. Welcome to Jim Henson's and it was just like
1977.
And he was, he was preserving himself.
Right. Yeah.
Because at that time it was, he didn't have a lot of voice and a lot of energy.
A lot of breath.
He had COPD had hit him really hard. Yeah. And he was at that point in and out of the hospital quite a lot.
Yeah.
And various bouts of pneumonia.
Well, that's a pro for you.
Yeah. But he knew that he had to sort of conserve his energy and conserve his resources.
He knew how to make
because he could still do it. He could deliver it. And this was after he had done, a whole session for Sesame.
Right. Where he'd done the count, no doubt. Yeah. Probably. And the count probably took a lot of.
Okay.
But throughout the whole thing, it's like we had the announcer interacting and calling out for John Tartaglia. And Jerry still is like, well, if we were at Sesame Street, I'd just say, yo, Johnny T, can I do that? It's like, let's do that. Yeah. And so we wrapped it up in just a few minutes. And then Jerry and Jan came to the concert. And they were at our first concert, which had all these technical difficulties. And I went up to they were watching from this box right on the side. Yeah. I went up to him after the concert and I was like, oh, Jerry, I'm so glad you were here. And he just held up one finger and said, I have a few notes. And I was like, we know everything you're going to say. It was all, all the notes were about like the missed cues because all of the cues for the lights and the microphones were programmed into the board to run automatically. And then overnight, the programming was lost. Like somebody had unplugged something that shouldn't have been unplugged. So they had to do everything manually.
It was, it choked me up when they, at the end of the show, when everyone on stage pointed up to the box where he was sitting and acknowledged it. It was great. But listen, Craig Shemin.
Yes.
What can you tell me about Richard Hunt?
Richard Hunt. I remember Richard. I spent a little time with him down in Florida when we were doing the Muppets at Walt Disney World. And, and I was the guy at the time, I was the guy in public relations who had to go and get quotes from all of the performers. I wish I have to find it. I had a micro cassette with all of my interviews, like brief little 5-minute exchanges with the puppeteers. And it's somewhere in this apartment. So if I ever find it, I'll have to transfer it. But, would always try and grab, and the one thing that these guys didn't want to do was do interviews for publicity while they're
working.
And that was when Diana Birkenfield, when I came down there and told her what I had to do. And she said, just remember, air comes first. And that was, that was the saying she always had was anything that goes on the air.
Air. Okay.
So anything that goes on the air comes first. That's the first
priority. The show
priority.
is the priority.
The show is the first priority. And
It's as it should be.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so I was able to tag after Richard and stuff. But then after Jim passed away, and Richard, they were doing the Muppets Celebrate Jim Henson, which was the tribute show that they did on CBS. So it was on Thanksgiving weekend
Of 1990.
Yeah.
The first time that Steve did Kermit, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I still had it in my head that I wanted to be a puppeteer. And David Rudman had scouted me out doing some stuff. And then so Kevin Clash had me to some workshops, and he figured, I'll get him in to work for free on this thing. So at that point, whenever they did these big crowd scenes, they would just bring in people, like writers and producers and,
Duncan Kenworthy.
and puppet builders. We were all in the back row.
Wives and brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that originally I was slated to do, I was either supposed to do Statler or something like that. I saw my name on the list. And then, when you get there, they're just sort of handing out puppets.
That's what happens all the time.
And, Richard is figuring out who's going to be in the back. And he just says, "Can you do two?" And, Richard had not seen me perform. And I'm like, I guess. And
Doing two puppets is hard.
Tough, yeah.
Doing Statler and Waldorf.
So he's like, well, why don't you do Statler and Waldorf? You'll be up in the corner.
Me too.
And so I put on Statler and Waldorf. I take 3 steps, and Michael Frith stops me. He's like, "Wait, you have them on the wrong hands. You have them on Statler, Waldorf. You're supposed to be seen as Waldorf and Statler, and we do that just to throw people off." And so I,
So 2 hours later,
I put them on the right hands, and I get up there, and everything, and they do a rehearsal. It's like, okay, we're gonna reset stuff. Everybody get off. And, we'd do the rehearsal, I climb down. And as soon as I get down off the ladder, Richard comes up to me and say, "Maybe you shouldn't do 2.
It's hard. It takes forever to learn how to do 2.
So I did Waldorf. Duncan Kenworthy did Statler. Bill Prady was next to me, next to Duncan, and Cheryl Henson. That was the back row. And all of this was shot in the Henson Carriage House, which is very small by TV standards.
It's where you rehearsed for Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, exactly. So you can imagine this huge. I mean, the set took up all of the place. Lyndon Mossy had designed that set.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing. It was like,
what was your encounter
that
with
was
Richard?
my biggest encounter
As your puppet
Richard.
captain?
Yeah, because that's, he didn't say you stunk. He just, as he put it, you shouldn't do 2.
That's what puppet captains are for.
Yeah.
They're supposed to challenge you, and then when you don't rise to the challenge, graciously suggest something else.
But what's interesting about Waldorf is that, it's really, Jim had very large hands.
Oh, yeah.
And inside of Waldorf, there's just these little cups that you can put your hand in, because that's how Waldorf can scrunch up his head, and so I'm trying to reach into these little cups, knowing that Jim had been in there,
Right. Yeah.
and like, how can you even do this?
Anytime you're in a puppet that's too big for you, let alone it being on your non-dominant hand. I was just doubling, just yesterday, I was doubling Oscar real quick. And Eric was throwing lines, and I'm slipping out of this thing because my hand isn't as large as it should be for that puppet. And it's a challenge. And that, again, thankfully it was on my dominant hand. So I knew what I had to do to sort of get some purchase in there. I can't imagine what that would have been like on the. Anytime I'm doing any character on my left hand, I try to have it be as solid or as small as possible.
Okay.
You don't want it to be big, and you don't want it to be floppy.
Right.
That's the trick.
That's what she said.
Yeah. You weren't really interested in any of that, Gene. I know. You'll just cut that out.
No, I'm not at all. People love
But
hearing
that's not
that
a
kind of stuff. The technical
But that's not a
stuff.
story
No,
about
it's inside
Jerry or
baseball.
Richard
That's
or
okay.
Carol.
All right. It's a bonus. It's a bonus.
Okay.
Well, guys, I speak for Bill and myself when I say, and it's been a pleasure hearing your stories. Thank you so much. I love you guys, and talk to you again, and hopefully see each other in person. And scene.
Yeah.